There goes half the church. Wow. Right, and obviously that was for all of you as well. So if you want boxes, come and collect. We have, I think, about 50 in there. So if you want to take a box for a friend or something to go and fill it as well, please do that. So in the beginning of November, first Sunday in November, we're going to bring those shoe boxes back. And then we're going to take it to Samaritan's Purse, who will distribute it as well. I think it's a great project to get involved and just to get involved with children not so fortunate as we are. Okay, right. Now, I don't know about you, but during the last couple of weeks, I was much more aware of my own circle of comfort and stepping into the zone of the unknown. Now, some of you may not even know what I just said. You know, it sounds strange to you. So if you missed the previous sermon or you missed this, what we're doing so far, we're busy with a new series. And it's called Just Walk Across the Room. And it's basically this idea that, we're all in some kind of comfort zone. You know, we're all usually in a group and a circle of friends that we're very comfortable with. And if we really want to make an impact in the world, if we really want to change people's lives, we need to sort of excuse ourselves from those groups of comfort, just walk across a room and enter the zones of the unknown. Because in the zones of the unknown, that's often where God does his best work. And that is the place where God may often use us as his instruments. So maybe you were also looking with fresh eyes. You know, if you were at that sermon, maybe you also looked at with fresh eyes at other people during the last few weeks. I know I certainly have. I went to a church barbecue with my family. Sorry, not a church. Sorry, you weren't invited. I'm in a school barbecue, friend. Sorry, a school barbecue with my family. Because Heidi just started school and we didn't know the parents, but there was a small group of parents that we knew. And the easiest thing for me would have been to just remain with those people that we know and sort of just chat to them and so on. But I found myself just saying to Aldre, you know what? Excuse me, I'm going to go to the guys at the braai. You know, first of all, because I love braai, but barbecue. But secondly, also because I'm busy with the series. And it's challenging me to excuse myself from the groups I'm comfortable in and to walk across the playground to those guys. So I just introduced myself and said I'm Yaku, and I started chatting to them. And before I knew it, I was the guy serving everyone, you know, their food. So I was making burgers, and another guy was joining me. And we just struck up a conversation, a little more than just, you know, put a cheese in the burger bun, you know, a little bit more than that. So we had this conversation, and we just got on well. And then afterwards, he invited my two girls to go to a party of his little girl. And a week later, I went to that party with the girls, and we continued our conversation. It was a great conversation, you know. We talked about rugby, of course, nice, you know, a nice conversation. And then we talked about cricket, and we talked about his job and his really interesting job that he's got. And I was very interested in what he's doing. It's fascinating, actually. And we just had a great, good old conversation. Now, here's my question. Who knows what's going to come from that initial walk across the playground? Who knows what's going to happen from this friendship that's beginning to just grow, just slowly. It's beginning to grow. Who knows what's going to happen with that? You know, but I find myself being much more open for the possibility that God maybe he wants to use me in other people's lives. And that's very exciting. Maybe you have stories like that as well. You know, maybe some things like that has been beginning to happen to you as well. Friends, the fact is we're all in this together. And I'm learning right alongside you, you know, of how to become a just walk across the room type of person. Because that's the type of person that God will often use to reach people who's living far from him. And the fact is that God's got a purpose for each one of us. You know, he's got a purpose for each one out there. He's got a purpose for our lives, and he loves us, you know. And that's why we need to develop in people like that. Let me ask you, just incidentally, do you know why Jesus came? Do you know what Jesus' mission statement on earth was? Here it is, Luke 19 verse 10. For the Son of Man, that's Jesus, came to seek and save the lost. That's it. That's Jesus' mission statement. That's why he was on earth. And if we say we want to follow Jesus, then our hearts need to burn for what Jesus' heart is burning for. Our hearts need to break for what is breaking Jesus' heart. What's that? People. People who are lost. People who are struggling. People going through difficulties. People who are suffering. And we need to reach out to them. Last time I said it all starts with a willingness to listen to God's voice and then to just take a few steps across a room. My next question is, and this is what we're going to look at today, is, okay, so now you've taken those steps across the playground or across the room or across the restaurant or across your office block. What now? What do you need to think about? What do you need to pray about? What do you need to look for? What happens there? And I'm going to summarize it in 3 points, and they all start with D's, so I call them living in 3D. It's like 3-dimensional living. And basically it's people who are living like this are constantly looking for the following 3 things. Number 1, to develop friendships. That's the first thing they are looking for. If we're going to reflect God's heart as individuals, but also as a church, then we must be on continuous search mode. We've got to almost develop this habit of always looking for friendships wherever we come. And I think that's really the way God wants to use us. And when we do that, when we are looking for friendships and looking to make new friends, I can bet you God's going to use you in some breathtaking ways. It's going to be some amazing things happen in your life. And Christ followers is that we should be open to new friendships. Because who knows what may come of those friendships? Who knows how you can impact somebody's life? Who knows how you can help somebody who may be struggling? How you can just be Jesus' hands and feet and reach out to somebody and help them, whatever their troubles may be that they are in. Who knows? Who knows what impact it will have on their lives, or maybe even their eternities or their families? Who knows? But you know what often happens in Christ followers' lives? Let me just explain this to you. Do you all know what direct correlation is? Basically, sort of with stats and stuff. Let's say you're trying to evaluate a guy's height and weight. Let's call him John. John's 15 years old, and he's just gone through quite a growth spurt. How do you spell that? Okay. So last year, he grew about 10%. He grew about 10% last year. And so that was quite a lot. He almost went up with about a foot, and his weight also went up in direct proportion, direct correlation with 10% as well. Okay, so that's very healthy. That's pretty good, if that were to happen. But now let's say the opposite is indirect correlation, with opposite way. And let's say his weight went up, or his height went up with 10%, but his weight came down with about 10%. Okay, so it's indirect correlation. Okay, that is not so healthy. Okay, so you all follow. Okay, so you know what this is, direct correlation or indirect correlation. Now let's say we meet a Christ follower, and her name is Jane. Let's just do that. It's easy when it's not attached. Yeah, okay, let's say we've got Jane. And let's say Jane recently came to Christ. Christ found her, and it's just blown her mind. She discovered why they sing about amazing grace, because grace is just so amazing. She's been redeemed by the King of the universe. It's changed her life. It's changed something in her. She begins herself looking newly at everyone, and it's just changing her life, and it's so amazing for her. She can't get enough, can't say enough about that. And let's just say her walk with Jesus is here, and that is just skyrocketed. Okay, so she's walking with Jesus. That's just gone up, and it's changing her life. Now, because it's affecting her life and she sees how it's changing her, she is open for other people, and she begins to just tell other people, she just walks with other people. She reaches out to them, people in her direct group, her family, her friends, and let's call that her love for others. Now, as a result of her walking with Jesus, she's looking differently at other people. And she just tells him about his amazing grace, and they're beginning to experience it. And over a period of time, over, let's say, a few weeks, few months, few years, a lot of these friends also come to Christ. Okay, so her love for others is just expanding, and it's touching their lives, and they are also coming to him. They're also getting to know him. And that is very good. I mean, this is the way it should be. This is the way it should be. We should be the salt of the earth. Wherever we go, we should sort of spread that just that love. But what happens? Let's say she's been doing this for about 10 years. Now, after about 10 years, her group of friends have now all become Christ followers. You know, her family, everyone is now following Jesus, and that's great. You know, she's having great fellowship. You know, all her friends are in churches. It's just amazing. It's wonderful. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is, though, that she's not reaching out to other people anymore. Okay, she's just got her group of friends. So what's beginning to happen is that her love for others, translating into reaching out to others, is actually decreasing. And that, friends, is not so healthy. And that is what often happens in the lives of Christ followers. And unfortunately, it seems like there's an indirect correlation between the number of years someone has been walking with Christ and the number of people they introduce to Him. It seems to me, you know, the more I speak to people, the more I realize that the longer somebody follows Jesus, the less people they introduce to Him. You know, because they become so comfortable in their group that they don't reach out to other people as well anymore. And that's not the way it should be. Because if you look at Jesus' life, I mean, He's the Son of God, and He was constantly reaching out to other people. He was constantly reaching out to people not believing. You know, constantly reaching out to people in trouble. Constantly reaching out to people who are suffering. That's His heart. That's who He is. And if we want to follow Him, that's how we should act as well. So here's my question. What's stopping us from reaching out to other people? I think, first of all, it's this fact that we become very comfortable. I mean, we make good friends, and it's great. You know, it's just wonderful because you get on with other people, you have a lot in common, and it's very good. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think there's a deeper reason. I think there may be a deeper reason that's not so good. And this is for everyone. You know, it's for all people. Just as we love some people, there are probably some other people that we can't really stand for some reason. Now, it can be a personal reason. It can be something like, you know, you've been hurt by somebody. So let's say it can be some specific people. So it was a spouse who hurt you in the past. Or maybe a friend who betrayed your trust. Or maybe it's a whole group of people. You had a bad experience of one person in a group, and now it's that whole group. You just don't like that group that much. You know, maybe somebody from a different socioeconomic level, or somebody, you know, that's just got a different accent than yours. And we often have these qualifiers in our heads, you know. So when I challenge people and I say, well, just walk across the room to other people, you know, you may have these qualifiers that pop up into your head where you say, okay, but they better like sports, or they better be British, or they better be South African, or they better be white, or they better be black, or they better be a liberal, or they better be conservative, or they better be old, or they better be young, or they better be rich, or they better be poor. See where I'm going? We all have these qualifiers. Do they ring a bell, some of these things? You know, a lot of times it's got to do with how you're brought up, or experiences you had, or whatever it may be. We often have these qualifiers. But let me tell you a quick story of how Jesus, what He would have said about that, what His opinion would have been. One day He was in a marketplace setting, a lot of people around Him, and there were some really ungodly people, you know, some people far from God, irreligious people who made a lot of mistakes, you know, people who painted outside the lines, you know, who slept in the wrong beds, who drank too much, who used terrible language, who cheated other people out of their money, you know, not the unsavory types of people who are in this marketplace. And guess what Jesus did? He spent time with them. He listened to them. He told them few stories of His own as well. He told them stories. He listened to them. He interacted with them. He just had some great fellowship with these people. And it didn't go down well with the religious leaders. You know, the churchgoers of that time, they didn't quite like that, you know, what Jesus did there. They thought, actually, they didn't just think it was not so good. They thought it was scandalous that Jesus did that. Because these people were on their, they didn't make the criteria list. They were on their we can't stand you list. And Jesus was interacting with them. Because somewhere along the line, these religious people convinced themselves that God's heart is probably like their heart. You know, that there are probably a few people that's on God's hate list. You know, that people that God doesn't that he can't stand it, he just wants to zap, and can't wait to burn them, something like that. That's probably how they thought. And so they thought it was okay. They sort of justified their own way of thinking. Thought, well, then it's okay for them to think that way as well. And so they looked at these immoral people with utter contempt. They just looked down on them. And they were definitely on the list of people they couldn't stand. They wouldn't reach out to them at all. But then Jesus hears all this grumbling, and he sees their hearts, and he just decides to tell 3 quick fire stories. One about, and it's probably the three of the most famous stories in the Bible. I'm sure you may have heard them. The first one is about a lost sheep, and then about a lost coin, and then about a wayward son. These 3 stories, just one after the other. First he talks about 100 sheep, and then about 10 coins, and then about 2 sons. Basically he's saying, in the stories of everything that gets lost, he says, whether it's 1% or 10% or 50%, the response is always the same. That's an all-out search for what was lost. So the stories, first there's 100 sheep, one wanders away and gets lost, and the shepherd goes and he finds that one sheep. The woman's got 10 coins, she loses one of the coins, she turns her house upside down, does a real thorough spring clean, finds that one coin that was missing and really throws a party because she found that one coin. And then the 2 sons, and the one says to his dad, just give me my part of the inheritance. It was basically like, it wasn't a good thing to do. It was basically like saying, you're dead to me, just give me my money. So it wasn't a cool thing to do. So he did that, and then he went and he just blew all his money on wine, women, and song, and in a foreign country. Basically, in each story, something that really mattered went missing. Something that really mattered went missing. Those were the stories. And Jesus just left it at that. He didn't explain it. He didn't say anything about it. Nothing. And I'm sure those religious people went away and they pondered the stories. They probably thought about it, thought, what on earth was Jesus on about? Why did he tell these 3 stories? And I think the penny probably dropped a few days later with some of them. Where they probably said something along these lines, where they said, oh, could it be that Jesus was saying that God the Father's heart is not at all like our hearts? Could it be that what Jesus was saying is that God is indiscriminately loving? That he was saying that those irreligious, immoral people were not on God's hate list, but on his love list? Could it be that God doesn't even have a hate list? Could it be that every man, woman, or child that's ever been on this earth matters to the Father? Could that be what Jesus was trying to say? Wow. And I think that blew their minds. Realized that that's the way that God views people. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what you've done, God loves you. That's the quality of his love. And before you and I will walk across a room to other people that don't fit our criteria, we need to overcome this one thing, where we say, well, let's get rid of these qualifiers. Because everyone matters to the Father. So much that he warranted an all-out search for everyone on this earth. That's why Jesus came. That's why he came, friends. And we can be all psyched up here, and we can say with conviction, come hell or high water, we will go out and we will walk across a room and all of that. Unless this thing changes in us, we will freeze up when we're in front of that challenge. Friends, to develop friendships, we need to cultivate an attitude where we just say, we're open. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter what you believe, doesn't matter what you think about life, doesn't matter. I'm just open to accept you for who you are. I'm just here to get to know you for who you are. And I just want to journey a bit with you. I want to care for you. That's where it all begins, friends. We need to become good friends to other people. And I know many of you are growing in your character, you're growing in your walk with Jesus, and it's brilliant. It's wonderful for me to see that, And I just want to challenge you to also grow in your ability to radically love everyone, to be inclusive, to love everyone. And once you're willing to do that, friends, I can tell you, you're in for an adventure of a lifetime. To see how God's going to use you, what He's going to do in the different interactions that you have with other people. So that was the first point. The second point is to discover stories. Bill Hybels tells a story of just one guy that he met at racquetball. I don't know, I had to go and read up what racquetball was. It's like squash, it's just a little bit different. Different lines on the floor, different rackets, different rules, but it's similar. So totally different, but similar. Anyway, so it's like squash. And he was playing racquetball in a league with this guy, and he didn't know him before the league started. But then they just week in and week out, they see each other, so they started to develop a friendship. And the trust levels gradually sort of grew, and Bill was just interested in this guy. They just had conversations. And about 6 months into all this squash or racquetball playing, this guy trusted Bill enough to tell him, well, he was working through a difficult situation with his own grown son. The man said that he and his son, came to a terrible place in their relationship, and after had a disagreement. And eventually this guy just decided to cut off his son, all communication with his son. And for some reasons, this guy couldn't quite articulate, he was beginning to regret his decision. So he wanted his relationship with his son back, but he was scared that it may have, he may have blown it for good, that he may have damaged the relationship so much that he couldn't get it back. And he just didn't know how to deal with it. So after that big revelation, in that one conversation after the racquetball game, Bill just, the week after, Bill just patiently just spoke to the guy, and he listened to him, and he just continued the conversation, and he just continued to build trust, ask him some very good questions, poignant questions. He asked him about his other family dynamics and just everything. So he just explored a little bit, and he was just patient with this guy. And then he just took interest in him. And then at some point, Bill felt a prompting to offer this father an opportunity. And he said it was a little bit risky. He wasn't sure how it would go down, but he felt the friendship was strong enough at that stage to withstand it. So he just said, you know what, I've got a friend. He's a counselor. He's a Christian counselor, and I've really benefited from him in the past, and I think you may benefit if I introduce you to him. How do you feel? Is that all right? And to his surprise, this guy said, yes, please introduce me to him. And then this guy, he met his counselor, and it just changed his life, and eventually he and his grown son they were reconciled, and it changed both their lives because this relationship changed. And Bill says, afterwards, he doesn't know whether this guy ever, whether they ever came to Christ, but he knows that what it did to their relationships was that it changed it radically, had a massive influence on their lives, just because Bill was open to walk with him. Just because Bill was open to listen, and to, when the opportunity came, to offer a resource and to offer what he already had to this guy. Often we're in a similar position. We meet somebody like that. We may play squash with somebody, and then it just remains at the superficial level. We go and play, I play touch rugby, or others of you run or cycle and so on. We keep it at the superficial level. We just chat a little bit, and that's about it. But what Bill did differently was that his focus was just to become a good friend to this guy. He genuinely wanted to help this guy. And that meant uncovering the needs and then helping to fulfill those needs. That was what he did. And this is so important for each one of us to grasp. Our goal should be to engage with other people and to build friendship, to develop friendships, so that we will have a baseline for asking good questions and to help them with whatever their need may be. And once we truly understand their needs, then we can help to meet it. Okay, then the last step is discern next steps. Now, what you'll find is that in any encounter with other people, you always have a choice. You can either listen to a person's story, really pray that God will use you in their lives and really guide you through that, Or you can just stop short, walk away. No commitment. You know, that's the easy way out. But if you decide to really invest yourself in that relationship, it will mean that you probably have to stick your neck out a little bit, and that you'll have to provide a resource when there's a pressing need and you can do something about it. I think there's a lot of adventures waiting for us if we decide to boldly go where God is leading us. And once you've risked walking across a room, sticking out your hand, introducing yourself, unearthing their stories, listening to their stories, my suggestion is that you really listen to what God is saying, where He's leading you and how He's leading you and how He's guiding you, and to continuously pray for His guidance and His wisdom and His creative ideas in that relationship. Just quickly have a listen to one of Bill's sailing buddies, Dave, of how he experienced a relationship with Bill.
I saw something so valuable inside Dave, and I remember just saying to myself, this is going to be a long, slow walk. He's got to see a Christian kind of walk the walk. I never put a time span on it. I just said, this is a guy I'd like to be friends with and let God do whatever God's going to do. I really wanted to make sure that it was God doing the work and me riding in the second position.
Before regatta, I was preparing my little area on the sailboat, and Bill would come up and just ask me how my week had gone, how Beth was, maybe what had gone on at work. I mean, the conversations never really moved towards faith or Christianity. And again, it was just so refreshing to me that he was concerned about me as an individual and what was going on in my life.
I think really trying to point someone in the direction of faith is usually the summation of a lot of little inputs along the way. I don't think it's the big 3-hour talk where you start with creation and end at the end of the Bible. I don't think it's a great big theological brain dump all at once.
I remember Bill giving me a copy of Case for Christ before it was ever even in print. And so in my travels around the country, on airplanes, I would pull it out and read a few pages. And I really needed that because I was so inquisitive about the science part of it.
Or doing this and watching these DVDs. So join a life group, or you could just go on Amazon, buy the Just Walk Across the Room DVD, form your own little group, and just watch it to see the rest. The point I want to make out of this is that we can really learn how to look at next steps through this, because first of all, Bill just saw Dave as a very valuable person. He just wanted to spend time with this guy, and he just said, God, you take over, you take the first position. I'll go with wherever you're leading, but I just want to develop a relationship with this guy. And the next steps he took was, he simply, just every week, he asked Dave about his family. He just asked him about Beth, his wife. He just asked him about his work. He just asked him these questions about his life, and he just developed a friendship. And that honored Dave, because he felt accepted, he felt cared for, and it just opened the door for further conversations, so that this friendship could grow. He was never threatened by the conversations, he was never intimidated by it, and that would be a good next step. And then there came a time where Dave was asking certain questions. As he said, he was interested in the science, behind it all. How does God and science meet? How do you answer the questions of all these different questions, that you get? How do you answer this? And Bill he knew a guy who wrote a book on apologetics, who wrote about this specifically, Lee Strobel. So he just took this book to him and he provided that, for Dave. And Dave could read it and it answered his questions and it helped him. And this is the thing I want you to grasp, is that it's about discovering the needs of people, just listening to them, listening to where they are, hearing their stories. And then if you've got a resource, may not be a book on apologetics, but maybe another book or something that may answer some questions, or some other resource that you have, or somebody whatever, then it's about introducing them to that. It's about helping and listening to God and listening to the people and bringing it together in that way. Just being his hands and feet, and that just blessing people and just helping people and giving to them. Friends, here's what I want you to grasp today. People matter immensely to God. All people matter to God. He loves them. He wants to be involved in their lives. He wants them to give them a purpose for their lives. He wants them to lead lives of significance. Everything. Their relationships. Their health. The way they interact with other people. Their work. Their everything. He wants to be involved in their everyday lives. And we have the privilege. We have the privilege to be involved in God's mission. To reach out to others and help them provide those resources. So here's my challenge to each one of you. Each one of you that's already been found by Christ, who experienced that, how amazing grace is. I want you to open your heart just to God's voice. I want you to open your eyes to see the need around you. And I want you to open your ears for the stories of other people who may be hurting. And then I want you to open your hands and reach out to them and use the resources that God has placed in your hands to bless others and be an instrument in their lives. Don't push it. Don't be somebody who you're not. Just go and be yourself and be a good friend and be open to the fact that God may want to use you to bless other people. Are you up for this challenge? Are you up for this? Yeah? Yes? Okay, great. I'm looking forward to hearing all your stories and to what you will tell me over the next few weeks. But let's just close in prayer. Let's just close our eyes and we'll pray. Dear Lord, thank you so much that you came to seek and save the lost. Thank you, Lord, that I was lost, but that you found me. Thank you that I was blind, but now I see. How amazing is your grace, Lord. Lord, I ask you that you will just come and break our hearts for what breaks yours. Come and open our eyes to see the need around us. And help us to just develop into good friends for other people. Please come and shine through us, work in us, and then work through us as well. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.